Hey, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, it's the Friday show. I'm Sam Sachs, your newsman, and I'll be here at least until the day I'm struck down by a malfunctioning Arby's delivery drone falling from the sky. And we begin on Fox News, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed Thursday his intent to take over all of Gaza, in case anyone had previously doubted it.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do. We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza from the awful terror of Hamas.
When Netanyahu talks about liberating the people of Gaza, he means that in an existential sense. Later, the Israeli war government approved of the takeover plan. Hamas called the Israeli leader's proclamations a betrayal of peace talks. Quote, Netanyahu's statements represent a clear reversal of the course of negotiations and clearly reveal the true motives behind his withdrawal from the final round, despite our close proximity to a final agreement. According to minutes from a cabinet meeting leaked to the press, this was always Netanyahu's intention, including the mass starvation campaign. Here's Mondoweiss reporting on the leak. Quote, the document purports to show that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refused multiple proposals that would have secured the release of the remaining Israeli captives during the ceasefire between January and March 2025. Netanyahu decided to break the ceasefire against the advice of top Israeli military and security officials and to cut off all aid to Gaza to force Hamas to surrender, the leak shows. Of course, Netanyahu wouldn't be allowed to maintain this genocide without the support of the United States. A report from the Center for International Policy found that since October 7th, 2023, the U.S. military-industrial complex has supplied Israel with at least $4.2 billion in weapons, every dollar of it in violation of both domestic and international law. To the extent they exist, and the longer this drags on, it's evidence that they don't. Next up, the feds may soon add to their tally of Democratic lawmakers arrested. Senator John Cornyn said the FBI approved his request to send agents to track down Democrats who fled the state house in Texas to deny the Republicans there a quorum to conduct business. The conservative majority is attempting an unprecedented power grab through a non-census year gerrymander that could eliminate up to 5 Democratic seats. With more than 50 Democratic state lawmakers missing, Republicans can't pass the bill. This week, President Trump backed the FBI getting involved, despite no federal crime being committed here. However, many of the Texas Democrats fled to Illinois, where Governor J.B. Pritzker promised they'd be protected.
But, the fact is that neither Texas nor the FBI at the federal level have the ability to arrest these Texas Democrats who are breaking quorum. They just don't. There is no legal precedent for that. There's no law on the books that would allow them to do that.
Trump is now moving on to bigger ideas for consolidating power. He's pushing for a new national census 5 years before it's constitutionally mandated. Trump also wants to exclude all immigrants who aren't yet citizens from the population count. That would also defy the constitutional requirement that all residents, not just all citizens, but all residents, be included in the census. The White House's goal here is to reduce the population counts in blue states and districts that might have large immigrant communities and thus reduce their congressional representation. Trump tried something similarly illegal in his first term when he wanted to add a question to the census about people's immigration status with the hope that it would suppress responses from non-citizens. The effort was blocked by the Supreme Court. And finally, operating death panels in the U.S. is extremely lucrative. A new report looked into the finances of the top 7 publicly traded health insurance companies and found that in 2024, they collectively made more than $71 billion in profits. The data was compiled by Wendell Potter, a former Cigna executive turned public advocate, as part of testimony he gave to the Senate. Potter attributed the surging profits to one thing: gouging. Quote, insurers continue to jack up premiums for their commercial customers and overcharge the government, all while millions of Americans continue to skip their medications, rationed insulin, and delayed care due to insurers' out-of-pocket demands. $71 billion a year is a lot of money. Think about it next time someone says the U.S. can't afford a single-payer public healthcare system, because the current system requires us all to pay an extra $71 billion on top of whatever our medical care is supposed to cost, just so that the line can go up and shareholders somewhere can get off. But Potter did note that insurers so far this year are paying out more claims than they had expected, and that profits in the first year of 2025 are down from their high marks last year. I wonder what caused the slight improvement in behavior. Did something happen recently? Anyway, the most profitable insurer in 2024 was United Health, which siphoned off $34 billion on top of costs. Its CEO, Sir Andrew Whitty, was also the highest paid, taking home more than $26 million that year. Sir Whitty was one of the executives at the company who was not gunned down in New York City for being part of a predatory industry. He did leave the company in May, though. Probably a wise decision. Now to a despicable attack on the labor rights of government workers. The Department of Veterans Affairs just announced the termination of union contracts covering 400,000 workers. VA Secretary Doug Collins claimed in a statement, quote, too often unions that represent VA employees fight against the best interests of veterans while protecting and rewarding bad workers. Well, that sounds like a bunch of bullshit. But it's the start of a union-busting campaign across the federal government demanded by President Trump. An executive order in March reclassified hundreds of thousands of workers in more than 40 agencies as critical to national security, thus allowing the president to terminate their labor contracts. Most of the reclassified civil servants don't work in national security at all, but instead at places like the EPA or the National Allergy Institute or the VA. This was just a pretext used by the president to attack unions that have attempted to block his mass firing of government workers. In fact, the president said in his executive order that certain federal unions had, quote, declared war on his agenda. The unions sued, They said they were being retaliated against for their protected speech. A court agreed and temporarily blocked the administration from ripping up the contracts until the legal question is settled. But then the Ninth Circuit Federal Appeals Court lifted that temporary hold this month. The judges made the deeply unserious argument that even though the president had targeted the unions over their speech, he was still likely to strip their bargaining rights had no speech taken place. Court, however, did order the administration not to move against any contracts until all legal matters are concluded. The ruling read, quote, "Whatever harm to collective bargaining rights that plaintiffs will experience due to a stay is mitigated by the direction to agencies to refrain from terminating collective bargaining agreements until litigation has concluded." Well, that direction was ignored. One of the unions involved in the lawsuit is the American Federation of Government Employees. It's the largest federal employees union. It also represents most of the workers at the VA who just had their labor contracts shredded. The union said in a statement it was outraged by Secretary Collins' order, and it was assessing its options to fight back. AFGE President Everett Kelly said, quote, "Secretary Collins' decision to rip up the negotiated union contract for the majority of its workforce is another clear example of retaliation against AFGE members for speaking out against the illegal, anti-worker, and anti-veteran policies of this administration." The VA workers who just lost the protection of their union contract include nurses, doctors, benefits specialists, housekeepers, electricians, painters, food service workers, lawyers, dentists, pharmacists, crisis responders, mental health specialists, cemetery workers, and janitors. Meanwhile, cops, security guards, and firefighters at the VA got to keep their union contract. Well, gang, I'd like to stick around and chat with you guys a bit longer today, but I've got weekend plans. Need to wrap this up. Yeah, I have my first roller derby lessons, so wish me luck. Anyway, this week's Rich Dick is Dean Cain. The Hollywood actor, best known for his portrayal of Superman and literally nothing else because he hasn't done anything else of note with his career, announced he's joining ICE. I don't know if Dean qualifies because there's a good chance he's joining ICE because he needs the money, since again, his acting career has been a failure. But we'll move ahead with it anyway. Yeah, Dean made the announcement in an Instagram video trying to recruit others to join ICE.
So if you want to help save America, ICE is arresting the worst of the worst and removing them from America's streets. I like that. I voted for that. They need your help. We need your help to protect our homeland and our families. So check into it, as I said, and join today if it's something that tickles your fancy, because we can use you.
Tickles your fancy? Hey, does masking up and kidnapping people off the streets excite you like it does me? Sicko. Dean later went on Fox News and said he'd be sworn in soon as an ICE agent.
So now I've spoken with some officials over at ICE, and I will be sworn in as an ICE agent ASAP. So they'll have 80,001 recruits for their 10,000 positions.
Well, they can't have a better guy than Dean Cain. Are you going to be hopping out of ICE fans and apprehending guys?
I will do whatever Director Lyons wants me to do.
Cain entered crank territory a long time ago, so this isn't all that surprising. He's a registered Republican who was a Rick Perry supporter in 2012 before hopping on the Trump train in every successive election afterward. He also served on the board of the NRA. And you could see this jump to ICE was eventually coming because just a few weeks ago, Cain was complaining about the new Superman movie being too woke because its director James Gunn noted that Superman is an immigrant. Here's Cain.
It's being portrayed as a real negative thing that we want people to follow our immigration laws, which is insane to me. Like, to me, it's insane. I think we're in a bad situation here now because it's being stoked by politicians and by NGOs that have a political agenda. And I think bringing Superman into it, I think that was a mistake by James Gunn to say, it's an immigrant thing, and I think it's going to hurt the numbers on the movie.
Yeah, how dare the movie reference Superman's immigration status? This would have never happened before woke.
Superman, Emily Stevens with Immigration and Naturalization. We just need a quick look at your green card.
Green card.
You are an alien, are you not?
Superman, I'm afraid until we get this cleared up, I'm gonna have to ground you.
Cain might have actually remembered this storyline and held his fire here, but decades of soaking your brain in conservative outrage causes tremendous damage. Dean Cain, not only the worst Superman, but also this week's rich dick. All right, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Michigan. It was sent in by Sam from somewhere in the Wolverine state. Enjoy. Thank you, Sam. Strong name. That's the show. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Find more MMN at means.tv. We also have a YouTube and podcast channel, and you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. One day, capitalism will fall. Until then, we'll be right here. See you next week.